Hi there, welcome back to the Mindset Check podcast. I'm your host, Misha McKittrick. This is a podcast where we believe that as you take time for a mindset check, you have more power than you think you do. And where we also believe that feeling is healing. You'll know what I'm talking about. This is episode 2 of Being with Lorenne. In the first season of this podcast, we are reading through my journal of when I was 15 and pregnant. And as we do so, we tackle a few tough years that I was going through. And by way of kind of going there, it allows us to also go there in your own life, in being able to learn and grow from someone else's story. It's such a beautiful thing. So in the journey of being 15 and pregnant, I also lose my little girl. And so we are in the middle of grief right now. And last week I interviewed my friend Lorenne Evans, who lost her little girl when she was 4 years old. And Lorenne has so much wisdom. She, loves to learn and decided to tackle grief, by holding 2 horns on the bull's head. She just dove right in. And really read a lot, and not just because of that, not just because she seeks for knowledge, she just has such a heart of wisdom. And I'm really pleased to be able to continue the conversation with her today, because we really dive into how she helped her kids mourn, and we also really talk through the things that helped her as she was going through her process, her favorite books, her favorite things, that brought her insight. And we're going to jump into all of that today. We're going to talk about traditions and things that have allowed her and her family to mourn and to feel the feelings. And I love how Lorenne has just introduced us to this thought and this topic, that feeling is healing, that when we allow these feelings to come and we choose to feel them when they come, that we move through a portion of our healing by doing so. So let's jump in and chat with Lorenne. I can't wait for you to hear everything she has to share. Lorenne, thank you so much for coming again. And I love our last episode and how much you shared with your whole heart, this beautiful girl that is still part of your life. And
thank you.
Yeah, of course. So I want to really move into, in this episode, a little bit more of like the how-tos and the things that really helped you, and how you celebrate her, and all of the different layers of like the how to grieve, because you were also in a space where, as a mom, not only were you handling your own grief, you were also needing to try to walk your kids through it and how for them to handle it. And so I want to dive into a lot of that. Let's start out by having you explain what Angel Day is for you and your family, and what that looks like for you.
Okay. We decided to call the day of her death, the anniversary of her death, her Angel Day. That's when she became an angel. I love that you say graduation, because they graduated from life. They're moving on to bigger and better things. Mm-hmm. Angel Day, we actually, since she was in the hospital for a total of 5 days, we have the day of her accident was also a very traumatic day for us, obviously. And so we call that L Day. That was February 4th. She was 4 years old. We celebrate the 4 years that we had with her on that day. And so, 2 times that week, we're honoring her. What we like to do on those days is have some family time where we like to go. It's in the middle of winter, so we'll go up and to Soldier Hollow and go tubing. We'll go ice skating. We stay overnight. We'll just do something really fun together. And that family time, I think, is so important for us we don't actually even talk about Elle. We did the first couple of years, we would talk about memories we had of her, but it just makes us feel the bond we have in our family. And we know that it's in her honor. On her birthday, we like to do a service in her honor. Just,
I love that. That's awesome.
yeah, we can't give her anything but service,
Yeah.
that we know she would appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So remind us how many years it has been since Elle's
and here,
graduation? 10 years?
mhm.
Okay. And how has it changed the way that, and how far apart, first of all, is, Angel Day, L Day? So L Day and Angel Day are like probably 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Well, the fourth and the eighth. So
the
yeah,
fourth and
4 days
the 8th. Okay, so
actually.
4 days. And then her birthday's how far apart from that?
That's in November.
Okay. So
November.
February and November. Okay.
Right.
Okay. And then how have you seen that change or evolve over time? Like the years that were brand new, fresh, and now we're 10 years into it. How does it look different, and how have you changed it, and how has that felt for you?
Yeah. Those days, anticipating her birthday and anticipating her Angel Day and L Day were very painful, almost harder than the day themselves. Just knowing that it's coming up. And on her birthday, it was more about grieving that she would be 5, she would be 6, she would be 10. Can you believe she would be 12? And kind of realizing and wondering what we have missed out on. And then Angel Day and L Day in the beginning were, there's a book called something like Your Body is a Calendar. Our body, we physically remember things, physically remember dates and seasons and times. And around that time of year, you feel it. And sometimes you wouldn't even know what it was until you look on the calendar and you say, oh, L Day's coming up. That would be where we initially, I would kind of relive the trauma and remember those day by day. This is the day that we went to Mackenzie's high school when she signed papers to go play soccer at BYU Hawaii. This is the day that we went to visit her new little cousin in the hospital. This is the day of the accident. It's 4:11. This is the time when our neighbor came running through our door. That was very hard to relive. And that was the essence of those days for the first few years. Gradually, it changed. 10 years later, I would say Elle's birthday is not painful. We hang our birthday banner, we get balloons, we always have donuts for birthdays. Our kids wanted donuts instead of cake. So we always get pink donuts. We have, packs of pink bubble gum. She loved to chew bubble gum, and it's just a day to I'm not saying remember that she's part of our family, because of course she is, but just honor the fact that we celebrate everyone's birthday in our family. And
Yeah.
of course we're going to celebrate Elle's birthday.
Right.
She's part of our family. It just reinforces that idea.
Well, and I think that when we take time to connect with them and to feel them, there is a connection. There is a stronger
Yes.
connection and a bond that
Right.
we are like reaffirming, even though they're in a different place.
Right.
We're affirming that connection.
We're still your family, and
Mm-hmm.
you're still our daughter and sister. And yeah. The Angel Day and L Day, are not sad either. We just take that as as an opportunity to have fun together and at least go out to eat, and we just had that common bond. Of course, it was a devastating experience that I wish that my children had not had to experience that trauma when they were so young. But because of that, it's caused a real strong bond. We've all been through it, and through a very painful and shared experience. So it's more kind of solidarity, a feeling of solidarity, I would say.
And what is it later? Are you still in the mix of celebrating and doing, L Day and Angel Day and her birthday? Do you feel that the importance of others have weighed out the other, and has everybody in your family always been on board to do all three?
One of our oldest daughter, Mackenzie, is very much on board. What are we doing for L Day? What are we doing, Mackenzie? What are we doing for her birthday? It's very important for her and our son Getty. And I think it's very important for all of our kids. They do not want her to be dismissed in any way.
Yeah.
And I don't want to dismiss her either.
Right. What do you have to say about, because I feel like sometimes people mark sort of the death day on the calendar. And my dad always would tell me, Mish, let's not mark that day on the calendar. If we feel sad, let's feel sad. If we don't, it's okay. Like, you can feel however you want on whatever day of the year that you want. And then he made it a point, like, let's make sure that we celebrate her birthday. And we talk about that in other episodes. But essentially, one of the things that I loved in talking to you is that you reinvented that day. You marked that day on the calendar differently. You didn't mark it as like, this is a day that I'm going to be sad. This is a
Right.
day, you just marked it as a day that, like, is an opportunity for your family to connect. And in some way too, like, seeing how Elle, like, is still cementing you
Yeah.
together.
Yes, she really is. I'm glad that you said that. I haven't really acknowledged that. She does cement us together. And we have had a lot of trauma in our life since then, since her death. Not as severe as her death, um, but where we could have been split uh, many different ways, and we're not. And I really I can give her so much credit for that.
That's so good. I love it. So I think you had mentioned when we talked being stuck, and being stuck in our grief. And there might be some overlap with the conversation we had in another podcast, the other podcast that we did. Is there something that you can add to that about how to get out of being stuck and what you were talking about with that?
Yes, I really took on grief as a job. I knew I had to get through it for the sake of my other children and for my sanity. Uh, I I went to lunch or visited with people who had children who had died, wanting to have a roadmap of how I can get back on my feet. Um, did a lot of research. I read a lot of books on grief. The most helpful one that even Rob loved, I'll just mention here, was called "Permission to Mourn" by Tom Zuba. He had actually lost his little daughter, then lost his wife, years in between, and then years later lost his son, and so he only has one living son. So he's been through grief, a lot of grief, and has a lot of wisdom, and it was a very helpful book. But I read a lot on grief.
Just so that everybody knows, I'll put that link in the show notes for that book.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes, I bought several copies and I gave them out to anybody that I thought it would be helpful for. It was so Rob was not dealing with his grief,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
but I said, it's a very short book. I said, just read a few pages and see what you think. And he read the whole book and he said that was actually very helpful.
Oh,
So,
that's so great.
um,
What was your number one takeaway from that?
there were many. He just even started out the book validating grief, the experience. He said, if I wish I could be there in your grief to take you into a room with the most comfortable bed and with the most comfortable dim lighting, with a big window out to see a beautiful scenery and flowers. And I wish that I could have someone there to make you whatever food, whatever you wanted to nourish and comfort you. And it's exactly what I would have wanted at that time. You have nothing to give and you just are exhausted with grief. And for someone to just come in and nurture and care for you and comfort you and let you sleep and let you just grieve in peace. And then he goes throughout the book just describing the questions that you have and describing how it feels in a way that really helps to connect you to your grief and say, yes, I feel that. Yes, I absolutely feel that way. He just offers some suggestions and thoughts that he had through his 3 journeys. It was very helpful. I also had a book called I'll have to find it and maybe we can
I'll put
put
them in the show
on the
notes.
bottom.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was daily meditations, and it was 365, so one for every day of the year. You just read a short paragraph, and it had something connected to grief. Every day it was helpful. Every day, whatever the thought was, it was relevant, and I appreciated it. And it was for all kinds of people coming from all kinds of different beliefs, and I loved it.
Awesome. Yeah, put those in the show notes for sure.
Yeah.
Tell me what were some things that you did or learned to do that you were able to stand in a place where you were helping your children grieve?
I looked into grief groups for children, and there was a fantastic center close by that dealt specifically with children, and they had different age groups. They had the young children, they had middle, and they had the teenagers, and they would separate them so the teens could be with the teens, the little kids are with the little kids, and they would do therapy with them in ways that those age groups, it was age appropriate and something that they could handle. The young kids, it was a lot more physical play and drawing, and draw how you feel about the day that you had to bury your sibling, or your mom. These were all children that had experienced a death with a parent or a sibling. The teenagers got to go out back to a campfire and have s'mores and talk about their feelings, and the parents didn't have any formal therapy, but we just got to sit together and talk about what we're going through. And so that was very helpful.
Wow, that's incredible.
The kids did that for about a year, and then they break for the summer. And then I encouraged them, let's go back. It was once a week, and none of the kids wanted to go back.
We're done.
So I said, well, if any one of you wants to go, we'll take you. And none of the kids wanted to go without the other siblings coming, even though they weren't spending time with the other siblings, but at the counseling. But thought, well, maybe it served its purpose. I also looked into the school counselor. They actually were very booked. They have like one counselor for several schools, and so she would only be available maybe twice a month, I want to say. This was 10 years ago, so
It's probably changed, but yes. Oh, cross your fingers.
yeah, hopefully. And so she wasn't really available too often. And I found that my boys in elementary school did not want to be set apart from the kids. Oh, you're going to
Grief thing.
your
Yeah.
counselor. Yeah. Oh, you're going into the principal's office with this counselor or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, you know. And the elementary school, everybody knew what had happened. It was in our neighborhood, and life flight had landed
Yeah.
in our
Yeah.
neighborhood. So the teachers all knew what had happened and were very, very helpful. But my kids just didn't want it to be their identity. They didn't want to identify as the boy that lost his little sister. And that's about after a year, they kind of just wanted to deal with it on their own. And I would bring it up probably too often for their preference. I would just be kind of, feeling it out. How are you feeling about Elle? And, what are your thoughts? And, you know, they just rebuffed it pretty much. Or they would say, I'm fine, I'm fine. Once in a while though, they knew they could come talk to me about it. And so I always made a point to say, hey, if you ever are having a hard time, please come talk to me. I would love to hear what you're feeling and what your thoughts are. And, I've never been through a death at a young age, and never. The first funeral I attended was my father's at age 30. I was 30. So I had no experience with death. And I told them that, and so what you're going through is something that I really don't know about. And I really respect that you have um, dealt with this, and you're moving through it. And I really would love to know, how you're moving through it. So they knew I was open to talking about it. So I thought that was something important to let them know. None of them took me up on it.
Interesting.
Very
Interesting.
often. They would talk to their friends. The older girls would talk to their teenage friends and college. And the boys, I just, dealt with it more privately.
Yeah.
So,
You never know still what's to come sometimes.
right. And then I know a couple of my children dealt with it in self-destructive ways for sure. And I knew that was a possibility going in. And so I just was trying to do everything I could preventatively.
Yeah.
Move through this grief and get to a point of peace before it
Yes.
eats you alive. And it did eat them alive.
Interesting that, I love how you have said, to feel is to heal, I think is what you said. And I think that
Yeah.
that's interesting to take a look at, what you've witnessed. And it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ones that have tried hard to push it away have had the hardest time coping
Yeah.
with life.
That's
Yeah.
very interesting because, again, like we've talked about the difference between the two groups of people who seemed to, move through grief and to get to a place where they were happy again. And then people who really felt like they just kind of got stuck in their grief, and you being able to like see it and witness it in your very family. That's an interesting
Yeah.
dynamic, and being able to see that grief just affects us on all levels, and that if we allow it and we allow the feelings, even as much as they hurt. I love Winston Churchill. He said, if you're going through hell, keep going. Like, keep
Keep
going. It's,
going. Yes. Move through. You will get to the other
mhm.
side. That's what I needed to know desperately.
Yeah.
Is there another side? Is
Yeah.
there another side? Yes, there
Yeah. And
is.
you mentioned in the last podcast that Elle has showed up for your son in particular when he was in rehab. And
Yeah.
it's interesting that, you know, maybe what escalated those self destructive behaviors also helped there was also the sweetness that came from it with her
Yeah.
being there. I think that's kind of
Right. And him coming to
Mhm.
terms with it. I think he has, I know he, through that process, came to
Mhm.
better terms with
Mhm.
her death and through those experiences that she showed up for him.
Lorenne, how can you state how helping other people on their grieving path has helped you on yours?
Um, I don't know that I've helped people in their grieving process. I mean, I always want to. I do have a very, very close friend that um, we've known each other since we just were newlyweds. We moved in next door, and her family's gone through a lot of difficulty, and our family's gone through a lot of difficulty, and so we've really been there for each other. She went through an experience, a life and death experience with one of her children, and I was able to be there at the hospital with her. This was after Elle died, and stand with her when the doctor is explaining the injuries, knowing that she was not hearing what he was saying and couldn't process it because of the shock. And when he left, her looking blankly at me and saying, what did he say? And, you know, just knowing what people need, knowing the support they need. She's told me that was so helpful, but also I know how important now it is to show up for people.
Mhm.
Just show up. Just be there. I was amazed at how comforting it was to look around at the funeral and not even see faces, just people were there. And they were there for us. And it was profoundly moving and it was so touching. People that had come to the hospital to make sure we were okay and just to visit, even though they couldn't come in, and just they were there outside in the lobby and um, uh, just show up. You don't need to say anything. I don't need to say anything. I know that now. I don't need to say anything.
Yeah.
I'm just there. There's such comfort in that. I used to really avoid situations where I don't know what, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to make things worse. And, but now I know
Yeah.
you just show up.
And sometimes I think it's okay to say, I don't know what to say, but I wish I did. Like, just say
Yes.
something, just be there, hold space. I think that we're crossing two things right now just because it's so beautiful how I asked you the question I asked you was how has it changed your grief to walk through with other people their grief? And it's interesting because I feel like that people who have grieved definitely have like a lot of really great things to say about how to show up for other people in their grief. And there's two sides of it, right? The side of like when we realize I've been there, and because I've been there and I've been at such a low point, I know, like, I don't know what you're feeling and experiencing, but I've experienced something at least similar. So it allows me to show up for you in this way. But then it
Mm-hmm.
it allows us to process our grief. I mean, it's the same thing that what we were talking about when we first started, and we were talking about how, rechecking in to being able to show up in this space and to share your story, so in hopes that it gives other people hope. You're processing your grief differently, you know,
Right. Yes.
and knowing that it's all interconnected. All of this is so interconnected.
Right. It
Yeah.
really is. And in you sharing about Taylor, I was listening to that podcast. It affected me so deeply, and I was not
Yeah.
prepared for that. And then knowing that I would be on this podcast and kind of reviewing my thoughts and feelings about her death um, has been very healing for me. It's been an opportunity for me to revisit that in a way that taking another step forward. I mean, my highest hope for the podcast with that this would be helpful for sure. But yes, in this, it has been helpful for
Yeah.
me, definitely.
it's interesting what it does to us to allow us to hold hands with people, have a deeper, richer human experience, and be able to respond with so much more compassion because we experienced it ourselves. Yeah. And then the way
Right.
that it allows us to
Yeah.
process that and then to know how to show up. So in that, what do you feel like are some other things that you could lend as good advice for people to respond to other people in grief? We talked about being able just to say, show up, just show up. You might not know what to say, just show up, hold space, be there. You know, we talked a little bit about that. And then, by way of sharing what the author in the book that you love so much, how he wished he could have create a space for you in a dimly lit room, and fed you and nourished you and that type of thing. We've kind of like also touched on it that way because that also felt comforting for you, that idea of someone creating the space for you to grieve.
No,
What are some other
right.
things that you can lend as good advice for people who might come across people who are close to them that are grieving?
Um, I I think you really have to trust them and the process that they have chosen, the way that they have chosen to grieve. When we push people to talk about things that they're not ready to talk about, that's very difficult for the grieving person. I remember I had a very close friend in high school that called me, had heard what happened, didn't know any of the details. It was within the maybe 2 weeks of her death, and was asking me all kinds of details about what happened. And I was still so in shock and so vulnerable. I just kept on answering her questions, but by the end, I felt
Wow.
exploited. I felt just wrung out, satisfying her curiosity. And that was not, I'm not going to say that's what her intention was, but it didn't feel, it felt like a violation at that point. And I really am an open person, and I really did want to talk about things, but she kind of led the conversation. And I think you have to kind of let the person who's grieving lead it, because you're ready to talk about different things at different times. And you as the observer can't possibly read their mind or know what they are able to and able not able to talk about, but just try to pick up on some cues. If they want to talk, just keep, oh, tell me more about that, or
Definitely say like, are you ready for that? Or
right,
yeah, I think that I th- yeah, and
just
I
be
think
gentle.
Lorraine, I think in the way of saying that, I love that you just said let people grieve the way that, because as you know, Rob's wife and Rob not wanting to grieve and face it in the beginning, I'm sure that that was a lot to work through and that was hard. But it's so beautiful that you can now sit before us and say, hey, let people grieve the way they want to grieve.
Right.
And then also with the outsider of your friend calling, I think it's okay to know that you can feel someone else's motive or their intention, and maybe her intention was just to gather information from you and to, like you said, satisfy her own curiosity instead of trying to hold something for you that you needed, trying to help you move into a
Yeah.
different space.
Yeah. And I think her personality is, that's kind of how she is,
Mm-hmm.
was trying to be supportive.
Mm-hmm.
We're good friends. Tell
Yeah.
me everything. Tell me
Mm-hmm.
everything. Go ahead. Go ahead. What about this? What about this? What about this? So but at the time, you just need kind of kid gloves on with people who are grieving in the early stages. Really have to be gentle. Um, my my mind, and I know this is a common symptom. My mind was not functioning normally. I
Yeah.
couldn't think very well. I really got worried after
Yeah.
about a year. Like, am I going to
Yeah.
have dementia the rest of my life? I mean, you really can't process things. And that's why they say don't make any big decisions the first year. You can't, you're just not able to think effectively and efficiently. And so you really need to be treated gently. So, yeah, I would just be there for people. I can tell you what would be the most painful thing and hurtful thing that someone could have said to me at that time because of the nature of the accident. I know some people believe that accidents are random, and if if she hadn't been there, if the driver hadn't been there at that time, they never would have died, and you would still have her today. If someone insisted on that, someone said, that's life, it's random, that would have been uh, very painful to me and very
Yeah.
hurtful. I think you have to respect the beliefs of those that are grieving more than at any other time. Don't tell them what to think or what to believe. That if they're asking you, what do you believe? What do you think?
Yes.
That's different.
Yes.
And even then, be careful and
Hmm.
gentle. We need to be
Yes.
respectful. They're very
Hmm.
vulnerable at
Hmm.
that time.
Yeah. Wow. I love those are perspectives that I think like might come, you know what I mean, naturally, but if you haven't crossed that barrier, maybe you don't think about that.
All right. I don't think of myself as an overly sensitive person. I probably err toward
Hmm.
insensitive.
Hmm.
Probably err on the insensitivity. I hope not too much, but wow, this yeah, experience has really awakened me to things we say. Words have power. They can be very hurtful. We yeah, and that's a time when you just don't say what you think or what you feel. You need to it's more important to nurture and protect the people that are so vulnerable and grieving at that time. You can leave honesty for
Yeah.
later
Yeah.
when they're stronger or when they want to hear
Hmm.
it
Yeah.
or
Beautiful though. But I think in essence, I think that's probably part of the reason too why so many people stay away is because they're afraid of what to say. They're afraid of if they say something. And
right.
I'm just going to say like if you err on that side, you showing up as that person, you're probably going to show up in a better way than any other person that could show up because
I
you are
agree.
sensitive to that and recognizing
Yes.
that in our culture we think we do need to say and we need to talk and really most of the time they might need you to silently go to the grocery store with them for the first time or just
Yeah.
be
Just
silent. They
yeah.
just might need a person there that just makes it feel
Yeah.
like everything is okay.
And really, if you can be an
Mhm.
undemanding person, a lot of times people you end up comforting them. That's a very common experience for people grieving, or end up trying to convince the other person, I'm okay, it's
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
But if you can um just just not need them to be happy or need them to be comfortable or need them to not be crying or need them to if
Talk
you
about
can
it or not
just
talk
be
about it. Yeah.
comfortable,
Hmm.
yeah, with wherever they are, whatever they need, and just say, hey, if you want me to go to the grocery store with you and not say one
Yeah.
word, let's do that. If you don't want me to go and you need
Hmm.
time to yourself,
Yeah.
let's do that. If you want a distraction,
Yeah.
let's go. Let's chat. Let's just chat about
Yeah.
the weather, whatever
Exactly.
you
Oh,
need.
I love that
Yeah.
so much. Are there any more um, nuggets of wisdom, of things you learned, anything else that you want to offer in the space of something that you know of that might help someone else out there as far as moving through their grief process? There's a quote by Helen Keller that says, "What we have once enjoyed, we can never lose. All that we deeply love becomes a part of us." And I love the way that resonates, inside, and being able to say that, like, you can still have the opportunity to deeply, deeply love, deeply love.
Oh, I think you will love deeper. When you experience that kind of pain, you will experience that kind of love. And just the evidence of pain, of that depth of pain, shows you the depth of love that you had. But in the future and with your children, you or with your spouse, you learn to appreciate life so much more, and appreciate them, and appreciate the fact that you're one day your spouse won't be there, or a sister, or your mom, or your dad. I think what I needed to hear was, be patient with your grief. What I wanted to hear was, you're going to get through this and you're going to be happy in 6 months, a year, just work on it. And because I could not stand to feel the way that I was feeling. And I wanted to know, when is it going to be over? When is it going to be over? I can't do this for years. And it was years. And it's inevitable. You just have to be patient. It doesn't mean that it's going to be horrible and terrifying and depressing. It will be all of those things, but not constant. Those waves will come and then they'll recede, and you will learn things about life that are so valuable, and about yourself. Be patient and do the work, though. Really do the work. Let yourself grieve. Let yourself feel those things, and have confidence that it's not going to kill you. You're going to be stronger. You really will.
Love that. Yeah, beautiful.
I guess that's what I needed to know.
And I love how you touched on that death really does teach us how precious life is. And if nothing else, like, no matter where you're at as the listener, if you have grief that's fresh, if you have grief that has kind of been hanging out for you for a long time, that maybe you have worked through or haven't worked through, or maybe you've never experienced it. That's one thing that I would hope that you would take away, is just that life is so precious. And when you experience something so close to you, like a major loss, in a sense, you tend to hold everything just a little bit more
dear.
More dear and closer to you, and more like it's a gift every day. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Lorenne, thank you so much. And we will look forward to the resources that you share that helped you. And just thank you for showing up in this space and walking through with other people, essentially holding their hearts gently, holding their hands, and helping everybody to just move through by sharing your own story.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the opportunity.
Thank you, Lorenne. Yeah.
It's hard, but it's good.
Yeah.
Hard and good.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening, my friend. Seriously, I feel a lot like, I hope that these grief episodes are finding people's hearts in the right space and really allowing you just the space to feel, and that it is really doing something for you, the listener on the other end. I really do believe that as we take time to think about what we're thinking, as we take time for those mindset checks, and as we take time to sit with each other in our grief, that we really are helping each other through this process, and we're gaining more power in our life. So I hope you're experiencing that on your end. Don't forget to join our Facebook group for the Mindset Check podcast. It's so fun. It is so fun to get together with you and chat with you, and some of the conversations we've had in there about affirmations and meditation and getting complete with our past, and just the opportunity to sit in something with you that allows you to have a breakthrough brings so much joy and happiness for me. And I know that it helps our other listeners. So it's really fun. You can go check it out if you want. Again, that's the Facebook group. You can find it, Mindset Check with my friend Misha, Mesha, on Facebook. And if you have anything that you would like to reach out and share with me, if you want to drop into that group and have a chat, if you have comments, questions, anything, you can reach out to me on Facebook. You can DM me on Instagram. And that's also at my friend Misha. And you could also send me an email at hello@myfriendmisha.com. And also, don't forget to leave a review for the podcast. I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much for letting me walk through a small part of your journey with you today. And remember that anytime that these feelings come up, to feel them, because it's allowing your healing. Feeling is healing. Until next time, my friends.